When bandits hijacked our carriage, my fiance and brother instinctively reached to save my cousin. I fell off the cliff. When I woke up, I had lost all emotions toward them. I was awakened by the sharp pain from my wounds. The first person I saw was my mother leaning against the desk, rubbing her temples. When she heard me stirring, her face lit up with relief. "Quick, Sophia's awake. Call the doctor." The doctor came in with my brother, Marcus. He stood there with his head down, not looking at me. Only after the doctor finished his examination did Marcus awkwardly step forward. "Sophia, about what happened that day." "I'm sorry. I thought Ethan would save you." Ethan was my fiance. 3 days ago, I had accompanied my cousin Ruby to the temple. But we were unexpectedly taken by bandits. When our carriage was about to plunge off the cliff, both Ethan and Marcus instinctively grabbed Ruby's hand. "Not mine." I nodded. Marcus's explanation made perfect sense. I was the one engaged to Ethan. By all logic, he should have saved me first under those circumstances. Marcus choosing to save Ruby wasn't really wrong. I understood completely. Soon after, Ethan arrived, too. Same awkward expression, same excuse. "Sophia, I thought Marcus would save you." I nodded again. Marcus was my biological brother. We shared the same mother. Before our father passed the civil service exam, Marcus and I used to help our mother sell embroidered goods in town. The path from our village to town wound through mountains. Once during a rainstorm, rocks came tumbling down. I pushed Marcus out of the way but got struck in the head myself. He carried me to the clinic. Running so fast he lost his shoes and didn't even notice. Only after the doctor finished treating me did he realize his feet were covered in blood. Anyone would have expected him to save me that day. So Ethan choosing to grab Ruby made sense too. Then who was wrong? Surely not me. Right? Right. The room fell silent. My mother, sensing the awkward tension, tried to smooth things over. The doctor said, "Sophia is fine. Just some scrapes and bruises. You two don't need to blame yourselves." Both men let out sighs of relief. Marcus whispered something in my mother's ear. After listening, she hesitated. Spoke to me. "Sophia, your cousin Ruby was traumatized that day. She can't be left alone right now. I'm going to stay with her until she falls asleep. Then I'll come back to you. You know how she is. She lost her mother so young. She's always been fragile. As her older cousin, you need to be understanding, okay?" My mother froze. "What did you say?" I looked up at her calmly. I said, "Okay. Go stay with Ruby. The maids can take care of me." I didn't whine and ask who her real daughter was like I used to. Sophia, my mother, looked stunned, reaching out as if to touch my cheek. We'd rarely had such intimate moments since Ruby came to live with us when she was 6. So when I saw her hand coming toward me, I instinctively turned my head away. Marcus seemed impatient. He gently pushed my mother toward the door. "Mother, let's go check on Ruby first. She's lost so much weight these past few days without seeing you." From the moment my mother said I was fine, all the guilt disappeared from his face. He casually waved at me, "Sophia, get some rest. We'll come see you later." That later turned into 5 days. After 5 days, when my scrapes had healed somewhat, my maids, Lucy and Crystal, accompanied me for a walk in the garden. Before we even arrived, I could hear laughter and conversation inside. Ruby stood behind my mother, massaging her shoulders. Ethan and Marcus sat nearby, discussing recent gossip from the capital. When they saw me, the conversation stopped instantly. Ruby turned around, looking surprised. "Cousin Sophia, why are you here?" In the past, when emotions clouded my judgment, hearing Ruby ask this would just make me feel uncomfortable, without understanding why. Now with my emotions gone, I could see things clearly. It wasn't "Cousin Sophia is here." It was "Cousin Sophia, why are you here?" As if I was someone who shouldn't be in this place. "Am I not allowed to be here?" Ruby stammered, trying to explain. "I didn't mean it that way. I just didn't expect your injuries to heal so quickly." She acted as if I had frightened her enough. My mother squeezed Ruby's hand soothingly, her expression darkening. "What happened that day wasn't your sister's fault. Don't take your anger out on her." Ethan chimed in. "Ruby already feels terrible about it, Sophia. You need to be more understanding." Marcus didn't blame me, but smiled comfortingly at Ruby. "Ruby, your cousin is tough as nails. A little fall won't hurt her," the doctor said. "She's fine. So don't blame yourself." I watched this scene unfold and suddenly felt bored. Ruby was my aunt's daughter. When Ruby was 6, my aunt passed away young. Her father remarried a harsh stepmother, who treated little Ruby terribly. When my mother found out, she immediately brought Ruby to the capital. Seeing Ruby's emaciated condition, my mother cried on the spot. She told me, "Sophia, your sister just arrived in the capital and isn't used to it yet. I need to focus on her for a while." "Okay?" I innocently agreed. That was almost 10 years ago. My mother had devoted all her attention to Ruby. My father was far away at the frontier, focused only on his career, barely writing home once every few months. But at least my brother still cared about me. Ruby was frail and often sick. When my mother stayed up all night caring for her, my brother would secretly take me out and buy me new toys and treats. Until one day my mother caught us when she scolded Marcus. Ruby intervened and I asked brother to go buy things for me. "Please don't blame him." That night, Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally he said to me, "Sophia, Ruby is actually quite pitiful too." So later, when I discovered Ethan had feelings for Ruby, I wasn't surprised. My whole life seemed to be about losing people. First my mother's attention, then my brother's loyalty, then Ethan's heart. And finally, I almost lost my life. I started staying in my room. Not because I was hiding, but because I didn't know what to do or what I wanted to do. I used to love visiting my mother's room. She had a cushion by her couch specially prepared for Ruby. She'd teach Ruby embroidery and tea ceremony by hand. I'd sit stiffly on a stool nearby, unable to join the conversation. Eventually, I stopped going. My mother even complained about it, saying I was cold and not as sweet as Ruby. Later, I loved writing letters to Ethan, sending sachets and accessories with them. In winter, I'd send me warmers I made myself. If I hadn't seen the exact same sachet on Ruby one day, I probably would have kept sending them forever. Days passed like this. I ate, slept and read as usual, but gradually grew thinner. Lucy secretly asked my mother to come, but Ruby was feeling unwell again. My mother couldn't spare the time and just sent a maid to check on me, seeing that I could eat and drink normally. She didn't ask further questions. But then Nanny Williams heard about my accident somehow, and traveled all the way from the south to see me. After Ruby arrived, my mother didn't have time to care for me, so she found me a wet nurse. Nanny Williams had taken care of me for 9 years. Last year, after her eldest son passed the civil service exam, she went south to retire. I never expected her to come back. As soon as she entered, Nanny Williams started crying. touching my already healed wounds and asking. "Miss must have hurt terribly." I forced a smile. Of course it hurt when I fell off that cliff. I couldn't tell which hurt more. My body or my heart. After I woke up, only my body hurt. After crying, Nanny Williams called Lucy over and questioned her about every aspect of my daily care. That's when my mother hurriedly arrived with Nanny Williams's son, now serving as an official in court. She didn't dare neglect her. Nanny Williams looked at me, then at my mother, and carefully said, "Madam, I know you're kind-hearted and value relationships. You pity Miss Ruby for losing her mother so young. But Miss Sophia is your biological daughter. Please show her more affection too." The more Nanny Williams spoke, the more forced my mother's smile became. After seeing her out, my mother stared at me coldly for a long time, before letting out a bitter laugh. "You're quite something now, bringing in outsiders to criticize your own mother." I felt irritated, not because of her rebuke. Because how dare she call Nanny Williams an outsider? Was Nanny Williams wrong? I looked directly into her eyes. "Mother, you never loved me anyway. Did you?" "You." My mother didn't get angry. Instead, she looked at me with disappointment, shook her head and left. I watched her retreating figure, and didn't chase after her to apologize like I used to. But unexpectedly, she came back the next day. This time it was about Ruby's marriage. She said Ethan and Ruby were truly in love, although the engagement was between Ethan and me. If I insisted on marrying him, it would just be forcing the situation. Ethan stood behind her looking at me with cold indifference, as if to prove he had no feelings for me whatsoever. I didn't give her much chance to explain. I simply said, "Fine," in a flat tone. But she wasn't as happy as I expected. She frowned at me. "Sophia, I know you're upset. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't blame your cousin." I think she knew she was being unfair. Otherwise, why would she keep telling me not to blame Ruby? But I truly didn't care anymore. Nanny Williams's younger son worked as an advisor in Princess Margaret's household. The princess was ambitious and had assembled a fleet for overseas trade. Yesterday, I asked Nanny Williams to secure me a position. The trading company didn't support freelancers, even with Nanny Williams's help. I still had to pass tests in literacy and accounting. The exam day happened to be my birthday. The house was completely quiet. Without even thinking, I knew my mother and brother were accompanying Ruby to pay respects to my aunt's grave. My birthday was the anniversary of my aunt's passing, after my aunt left this world. This day became Ruby's taboo. My mother never celebrated my birthday again. At first, I understood. After all, my aunt was her sister. It was natural for her to grieve and not think about my feelings. But later, I discovered that I was the only one in the house who could celebrate birthdays. Ruby's birthday was only 3 days different from mine, but hers was celebrated as usual. I stubbornly asked my mother, "If I can't celebrate my birthday, why can she? Doesn't she think of Aunt when she celebrates hers?" Ruby cried for days because of what I said, then fell ill. For however long she was sick, my mother made me kneel in the courtyard as punishment. I think it was from that moment on that I could never feel close to my mother again. The memory of the cold stone biting into my knees washed over me, but it was just a faint echo now. The raw, burning injustice I used to feel had been cleanly severed, leaving behind a profound, quiet emptiness. I adjusted the sleeves of my simple, dark blue gown, a stark contrast to the bright silks Ruby favored, and stepped out of my courtyard. Lucy trailed behind me, her brow furrowed with worry. Miss, are you sure about this? The trading company, it's no place for a noble lady. Madam will be furious when she finds out. Let her be, I said evenly, not breaking my stride. She gave my fiance to Ruby without a second thought. My reputation as a noble lady is already compromised. At least this way, I'll have silver in my own pockets. The streets of the capital were bustling. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of steamed buns and damp earth. I navigated through the crowds toward the grand estate of Princess Margaret. The trading company's recruitment hall was situated in the outer courtyard. It was filled with men, merchants, scholars, and hardened sailors. When I walked in, a few heads turned, their eyes skimming over me with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. Nanny Williams's younger son, Thomas, was waiting by the entrance. He looked anxious, his hands wringing together until he saw me. Miss Sophia, he bowed slightly, his voice hushed. The written exam is about to begin. Are you certain you want to proceed? The princess's chief steward, Mr. Vance, is notoriously strict. He does not favor noblewomen playing at commerce. I am not playing, Thomas, I replied, my voice steady. Lead the way. The exam room was austere. I was assigned a small desk at the back. When the papers were handed out, I skimmed the contents. They were complex ledgers, requiring not only basic arithmetic but an understanding of currency exchange rates between the capital, the southern ports, and the foreign territories across the sea. I picked up my brush. Before my father had been stationed at the frontier, he had taught me the basics of accounting, saying a woman should know how to manage an estate so she wouldn't be cheated by stewards. After he left, and my mother's attention shifted entirely to Ruby, I had spent countless hours in my father's study, devouring his books on geography, trade routes, and economics simply because I had nothing else to do. For 2 hours, the only sound in the room was the scratching of brushes against paper and the occasional clatter of an abacus. When the time was up, I handed my paper to a stern-looking clerk. The results will be posted by the afternoon, the clerk announced. Those who pass will proceed to the interview with Mr. Vance. I didn't wait around. I went to a nearby tea house with Lucy, sipping bland tea and watching the street below. Miss, Lucy began tentatively, her hands wrapped tightly around her cup. Today is your birthday. Should we buy a small cake? Just for us? I looked at her. Her eyes were wide, filled with the kind of pity I used to crave from my mother. Now, it just felt unnecessary. No need, Lucy. Save the coins. We might need them if we have to leave the estate. Lucy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Leave? But where would we go? You are the legitimate daughter of the house. Legitimate in name only, I stated matter-of-factly. Once the engagement to Ethan is officially broken, my mother will likely arrange another marriage for me. Someone far away, or perhaps a widower, to ensure I don't overshadow Ruby's happiness. I need an escape route. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip when we returned to the recruitment hall. A small crowd was gathered around a bulletin board. I stood at the back, waiting for the throng to thin out before I approached. Number 42, Thomas's voice called out from beside the board. He was grinning broadly. Miss Sophia. You placed first in the written examination. A murmur rippled through the remaining men. First place. A woman. I felt a faint flicker of satisfaction, but it was purely intellectual. I had proven my competence. That was all that mattered. Mr. Vance will see you now, Thomas said, gesturing toward an inner door. The chief steward's office was cluttered with maps, navigational instruments, and stacks of manifests. Mr. Vance was a man in his late 50s, his face weathered by sea salt and sun. He didn't look up when I entered, continuing to review a document. Sophia, he read from a ledger on his desk. Perfect score on the exchange rate calculations. You even accounted for the recent depreciation of the southern silver tail. Impressive. He finally looked up, his piercing eyes assessing me. But you are a noblewoman. The daughter of Lord Highbury. I am, I confirmed, standing tall. Why does the daughter of a lord want to work in a trading fleet? He asked, leaning back in his chair. This is not a parlor game. The work is grueling. It requires dealing with rough men, foreign merchants who don't respect women, and the constant threat of piracy and ruin. What makes you think you can handle it? Because I have nothing to lose, I answered honestly. Mr. Vance raised an eyebrow. Nothing? My family's wealth is not mine to control. My reputation is of no concern to me. I have no emotional attachments tying me to the capital. I am looking for independence, Mr. Vance. And I am willing to work harder than any man in that hall to secure it. He stared at me for a long moment. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I simply held his gaze, letting him see the absolute barrenness behind my eyes. I wasn't a fragile flower looking for an adventure. I was a survivor looking for a life raft. The fleet sails for the Jade Coast in 2 weeks, he said abruptly. You will start as a junior purser. You will manage the cargo manifests for 3 of our mid-sized vessels. The pay is 20 silver taels a month, plus a fraction of a % commission on successful trades. If you fail, you are fired. If you complain about the conditions, you are fired. Do we understand each other? Perfectly, I said, a genuine, albeit small, smile touching my lips. Report to the docks tomorrow at dawn. Don't wear silk. Returning to the estate felt like stepping back into a stagnant pond after breathing fresh mountain air. As I walked through the main gates, the head steward intercepted me. Miss Sophia, Madam has been looking for you. She is in the main hall. I nodded and made my way there. The atmosphere in the hall was suffocatingly warm. My mother sat in the center chair, her face etched with exhaustion and a lingering trace of grief from visiting the cemetery. Marcus sat to her left, looking impatient. Ethan was there as well, standing near the window, his posture stiff. And, of course, Ruby. She was sitting on a plush stool near my mother, her eyes red and puffy, dabbing at her face with a silk handkerchief. Where have you been? My mother demanded as soon as I crossed the threshold. You've been gone all day. I had errands, I replied simply, not offering an explanation. Errands? Marcus scoffed. On the anniversary of Aunt's death? You couldn't even stay home to show some respect? Aunt was Ruby's mother, not mine, I pointed out calmly. I paid my respects in my own way. Why was my presence required? Ruby let out a soft sob, hiding her face in her hands. Ethan immediately stepped forward, his jaw tight. Sophia, do you have to be so callous? Ruby has been weeping all day, and your absence only made her feel as though you blame her for everything. I looked at Ethan. This was the man who had promised to protect me. The man who had worn my handmade sachets while secretly harboring feelings for the cousin I lived with. I don't blame Ruby for anything, I said, my voice completely devoid of inflection. I don't care enough to blame her. The room went dead silent. My mother stood up, her face pale. Sophia. What is wrong with you? Ever since you woke up, you've been acting like a stranger. You're cold, you're insolent. I am alive, I interrupted smoothly. Which is more than can be said if I had waited for Marcus or Ethan to save me. Marcus flinched as if struck. Sophia, we told you. It was a split-second decision. Ruby was closer. I know, Marcus, I said, holding up a hand to stop him. And I told you, I understand. I accept your choice. I accept Ethan's choice. I have accepted that Ruby is the priority in this family. So why are you all so angry with me for acting accordingly? Because you're acting like you hate us. Marcus burst out, his fists clenched. I don't hate you, I said, feeling a strange sense of exhaustion wash over me. I just don't feel anything for you anymore. The fall killed whatever affection I had. You are my brother by blood, and you are my mother by birth. But beyond that, we are nothing. My mother swayed, grabbing the armrest of her chair to steady herself. Ruby gasped, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. You don't mean that, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You're just trying to punish us. I am ending the engagement, Ethan, I said, turning my gaze to him. Officially. I will have Nanny Williams draft the documents tomorrow and send them to your family's estate. You are free to marry Ruby. I wish you both a prosperous life. I turned on my heel and walked out of the hall before any of them could respond. The next 2 weeks were a grueling blur of activity. I woke before dawn every day, dressing in simple linen trousers and a tunic, binding my hair tightly. I slipped out of the side gate and walked to the docks. The smell of the harbor, a pungent mix of fish, tar, and salt, became my new perfume. The work was exhausting. I spent hours in cramped, dimly lit cargo holds, tallying crates of silk, porcelain, and tea, cross-referencing them against the manifests. The sailors were rough, but once they realized I didn't flinch at their curses and could catch their mathematical errors before the quartermaster did, they began to treat me with a grudging respect. Lady Sophia, a burly bosun named Griggs, grunted one afternoon, handing me a manifest smeared with grease. 3 crates of ginger missing from the port side hold. Think the rats got 'em, or the dock workers? Dock workers, I replied without looking up from my ledger. Rats don't leave crowbar marks on the adjacent crates. Deduct the cost from the Stevedore Guild's final payment and report the theft to the harbor master. Griggs grinned, showing a row of missing teeth. Aye. You've got a sharp eye, lady. At the estate, my absence went largely unremarked upon at first. My mother was heavily involved in preparing for Ruby and Ethan's official betrothal. The house was constantly filled with tailors, jewelers, and matchmakers. When I did cross paths with my family, it was usually late at night. Marcus tried to corner me once in the corridor, smelling faintly of alcohol. Where do you go every day? He demanded, blocking my path. You leave before sunrise and come back smelling like a common laborer. I am taking walks, I lied smoothly. The doctor said fresh air is good for my recovery. You're avoiding us, he accused, his eyes bloodshot. You're trying to make us feel guilty. Marcus, please move, I said, my tone flat. I am tired. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight, almost painful. Why are you doing this, Sophia? Just yell at me. Cry. Do something. This emptiness. It's driving me mad. I looked down at his hand gripping my wrist, then up at his desperate face. I felt a mild annoyance, nothing more. Let go of me, Marcus, I said softly. Or I will scream, and the servants will see the young master of the house assaulting his sister. He dropped my hand as if I had burned him, stumbling back. You're a monster, he whispered. No, I replied, smoothing my sleeve. I am a ghost. You just haven't realized I died on that cliff yet. The day before the fleet was set to sail, the bomb dropped. My father returned from the frontier. Lord Highbury was a stern, uncompromising man. He rode into the courtyard on a massive black warhorse, covered in dust, his armor clanking. The entire household rushed out to greet him. My mother wept, throwing herself into his arms. Ruby stood demurely to the side, dabbing her eyes. Marcus bowed deeply. I stood on the periphery, watching the reunion with the detachment of a theatergoer watching a play. Where is Sophia? My father's booming voice cut through my mother's sobs. The courtyard went quiet. The crowd parted, revealing me standing near the archway. My father strode toward me. His sharp eyes swept over my plain linen clothes, noting my tan skin and calloused hands. He frowned deeply. What is the meaning of this attire? He demanded. And what is this nonsense I hear from the capital gossip mill? Your engagement to the Ethan boy is broken, and he is to marry Ruby? He turned his furious gaze on my mother. I leave you to manage the household, and I return to find my legitimate daughter cast aside for my niece? My lord, please, my mother stammered, wringing her hands. It was a mutual decision. Ethan and Ruby, they have a deep connection. And Sophia agreed. She drafted the documents herself. Is this true? My father asked, turning back to me. It is, I confirmed. I ended the engagement. Why? He demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Because when our carriage was attacked by bandits a month ago, and we were forced off a cliff, both my fiance and my brother chose to save Ruby instead of me, I stated clearly, my voice carrying to every servant in the courtyard. I realized my position in this family. I simply formalized it. My father froze. The color drained from his face as he slowly turned to look at Marcus, who was visibly trembling, and then at my mother, who had clapped a hand over her mouth in horror. Bandits, my father whispered, his voice dangerously low. A cliff? Why was I not informed of this? My lord, she was fine, my mother cried out. The doctor said it was just scrapes. We didn't want to worry you at the frontier. Silence, my father roared. The sheer force of his anger made everyone in the courtyard flinch. Even I blinked, mildly surprised by the intensity of his reaction. He looked at Marcus. You chose your cousin over your own sister? Marcus fell to his knees. Father, it was a split second. Get out of my sight, my father snarled. He turned to my mother. And you? You allowed this? You allowed her fiancé to abandon her, and then rewarded him by giving him your niece? Sophia is strong, my mother wept. Ruby is fragile. She lost her mother. And Sophia nearly lost her life, my father bellowed. Because of your blatant favoritism, this house has become a laughingstock. My daughter, the legitimate heir of the Highbury bloodline, treated like a second-class citizen in her own home. He turned back to me, his expression softening slightly, though the fury still burned in his eyes. Sophia. Come with me to my study. We will fix this. I will speak to Ethan's father myself. He will marry you, or I will ruin his family. No, father, I said. The courtyard was so silent you could hear the wind rustling the leaves of the ancient oak tree. What did you say? He asked, genuinely shocked. I will not marry Ethan. I will not marry anyone you arrange for me. And I will not be staying here. I reached into the sleeve of my tunic and pulled out a rolled-up parchment. It was a formal contract of employment, stamped with the seal of Princess Margaret's trading company. I am leaving tomorrow at dawn on the CWYRM, I said, holding out the document. I have secured a position as a purser for the Royal Trading Fleet. We sail for the Jade Coast. My father stared at the seal, his jaw slack. A purser? A merchant? You are a noblewoman. I forbid it. You cannot, I said calmly. The contract is countersigned by the princess's chief steward. To break it would be to insult the royal house. Furthermore, I am of age. I have my own travel permits, secured by Nanny Williams's son. Sophia, please, my mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Don't do this. Don't leave us. We are a family. I looked at her. For the first time since waking up, a tiny flicker of an emotion stirred in my chest. It wasn't love. It wasn't anger. It was pity. We haven't been a family in 10 years, Mother, I said softly. You have your daughter. Marcus has his sister. Ethan has his bride. You don't need me. And more importantly, I don't need you. I bowed deeply to my father, the perfect picture of filial piety. Thank you for the accounting lessons, Father. They proved invaluable. I turned and walked back toward my courtyard to finish packing my meager belongings. The docks were shrouded in mist when I arrived the next morning. The CWYRM was a massive galleon, its dark wood hull creaking against the moorings. The harbor was a symphony of chaos, shouting sailors, screeching gulls, and the heavy thud of cargo being loaded. Lucy stood beside me, clutching a small bundle. "Are you sure about this, miss?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The sea is dangerous." "The land was worse," I replied, securing my satchel over my shoulder. "Sophia." The voice cut through the fog. I turned to see Marcus running down the pier. He looked terrible. His clothes were rumpled, and he looked as though he hadn't slept in days. He skidded to a halt a few feet away from me, gasping for breath. "Sophia, please," he begged, tears welling in his eyes. "Don't go. Father is furious. He locked Mother in her quarters. He threatened to disown me. The whole house is falling apart without you." "That sounds like a problem for the heir of the Highbury estate," I said, my voice indifferent. "Which is you, Marcus." "I was wrong," he cried, falling to his knees on the damp wooden planks. "I was so wrong. When I saw you falling, I thought Ethan had you. I swear to God, I thought he had you. If I had known." "But you didn't," I interrupted. "And in the moment that mattered, your instinct was to reach for Ruby." "I don't blame you, Marcus. I really don't. Instincts are honest things. They tell us who we truly value." "I value you," he sobbed, reaching out to grab the hem of my tunic. "You're my sister. I carried you down the mountain when we were kids. My feet bled for you. And I pushed you out of the way of falling rocks," I reminded him gently, pulling my tunic from his grasp. "We paid our debts to each other, Marcus. We are even." "Miss Sophia." Mr. Vance's voice barked from the gangway. "We cast off in 5 minutes. Get aboard." "I have to go," I said, turning away from my brother. "Sophia, please. I'll do anything. I'll never speak to Ruby again. I'll." "Goodbye, Marcus," I said, not looking back. I walked up the gangway, the wooden planks shifting slightly beneath my feet. As I stepped onto the deck of the CWYRM, I felt a sudden, profound sense of lightness. The heavy, suffocating weight of my past, the desperate need for my mother's love, the betrayal of my brother, the hollow promises of my fiance, stayed on the dock. The ship lurched as the mooring lines were cast off. The massive sails caught the morning wind, snapping taut with a sound like thunder. I walked to the stern, leaning against the railing. As the ship pulled away from the harbor, the fog began to lift. I could see Marcus still kneeling on the pier, a tiny, broken figure growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely into the mist. I turned my face toward the open ocean. The wind was cold and tasted of salt, but for the first time in my life, I took a deep breath and felt absolutely nothing but freedom.